Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is the price of war. Before I get into it, if you'd like to support the channel on Patreon, you'll get non commercial videos in advance, and we can talk back and forth on Patreon. The link will be in the description if you're interested. If you'd like to learn to astral project, I'd be glad to offer a lesson. We'll discuss your custom concerns, astral projection rules of the road, techniques, help you to remove fear, blockages, help you gain more control over your present astral projections if you're already currently doing it, and to help you increase the frequency. If this is something of interest, you can get more information by asking for info with the email which is in the description section of this video. The price of war. Unfortunately, there's always a price paid whenever there's a conflict. And I'd like to talk about two characters, two individuals who are very important to me for different reasons. The one is the monk and the other is the virgin. You might recall that they were members of my astral guide school class. Of course, these aren't their real names. These are my nicknames for them. The monk was a very powerful individual, and he assisted me on a number of missions. The last time I saw him in one piece was when he and the Virgin went off on a mission of their own and disappeared. I found the Virgin and found that he'd gone over to the side of the Master. He tried to talk me into it. That didn't work. And then I went looking for the monk, only to find him trapped on a Death Star, otherwise known as a magnetar. I couldn't approach him at all because of the energy coming off this celestial object. I had to project about 10,000 years into the future when the magnetic field around this strange object in space had finally dissipated. Only then could I collect what was left of my friend the monk. His soul matrix had been essentially scattered about the magnetar. That was the last time I saw him. I summoned help, and healers came from a healing plane on the astral, and they took him away. Since that time, I've been trying to visit with him. I finally got permission. But before I get into that, I want to tell you about an experience that I had not too long ago that I haven't shared here. And believe me, even though it doesn't seem to be related, it is. I had previously visited a planet that was more evolved than the Earth. I also asked whether I could visit a planet that was less evolved than the Earth. And when I got there, I could see it was mostly a water world. It was very few islands of land, and it was mostly covered by a universal ocean. I was cautioned by the entity that was assisting me that I should keep my vibrational level high, because these lesser developed planets can be a trap. If you allow your vibrational level to sink through negative emotions, fear, anger, for instance, you can end up becoming trapped on that planet and end up in that reincarnation cycle. So, with that warning ringing in my astral ears, I descended to this water world, actively searching out for what I could find or what was basically some sort of intelligence. I sank into the water in a place where I sensed there was intelligence of sorts. It was a very base level, but I could tell that there was a number of life forms in the ocean, but they were mostly very animalistic. But the ones that I had zoomed in on seemed to be much more intelligent based on what they were surrounded with. I descended to about somewhere around 65 feet or so based on my estimates. I guess that would be somewhere around 20 meters for our metric friends. When I saw this group of creatures swimming my way, now I scanned them and they didn't detect me, but all I could feel was a lot of violence coming from them. They looked like a cross between a giant jellyfish and a squid. Their body was very flat, like a jellyfish, but their tentacles were more substantial, much more like a squid's, for instance. They were swimming, though, towards another group that were swimming towards them. Each one of these two groups carried barbs. And I think I got the impression, and this was very difficult penetrating these minds. They got these barbs from some sort of poisonous creature on their planet, and they were using them as simple spears. And as both groups approached one another, they started stabbing one another. And greenish liquid started leaking out into the ocean. And there was this frenzy of combat going on. And as I scanned the situation, I could feel the fear, the pain, the anger. It was, in a very base way, almost attractive. And for a second, I felt compelled in some weird way to try to join in. It was at that point that the warning from that entity kicked in, and I pulled myself back and started thinking of love and higher type emotions, trying to feel sympathy for these individuals and trying to broadcast and fill myself full of love and pity for those who were being hurt and injured. And so I felt myself becoming more and more detached from the carnage that was happening in front of me. But there was a powerful pull to join in, and I'm glad I got that warning, because if I hadn't been disciplined that way, who knows what might have happened. I might have ended up being trapped into some sort of reincarnation cycle on this planet, because the temptation was certainly there. In the middle of the battle, I'm not sure who was winning, because quite frankly, after a while, I couldn't tell who was who. And I'm sure they had some way of telling. But to me, it looked like a melee with no rhyme or reason. But then suddenly, they all took off into different directions as if on some sort of prearranged signal. And just at that point, I saw this, it looked like a flat object that was coming in. It was very wide. I would say it was probably at least 20 feet wide, which is what, somewhere around 6 meters? And every bit as long as that. And I wasn't quite sure what it was until it opened its mouth, which was an enormous gaping jaw with these sharp teeth inside, like daggers. And it consumed the floating dead or wounded of these squid like creatures who had been injured or killed in the battle, and just swallowed them and made very short work of them within a matter of minutes. And then it just swam off. And I just watched it as it departed, just a little in shock of what was going on. I think I'd seen enough at that point to get the idea of a planet that was more primitive than than Earth, and I wanted to get out of there because I was having to exert an enormous amount of will to keep myself separate from this violence that was going on around me that I said was a bit seductive, and I was making a very great effort to keep my vibrational level high. I ascended out of that atmosphere and bid that planet goodbye. I named it Oceania. I know it's not very creative, but it helps to have names for things. So I just wanted to tell that story, just so you'll understand what happens later on. I wanted to visit my friend, the monk, but I'd been told to wait because he was on a healing plane. And from time to time, I continued to ask, well, when can I visit him? When can I visit him? Finally, I got permission recently, and I went to that plane. As soon as they sensed that I was there, they were very kind to create a conventionalization for me. In other words, they created a hospital so that I could have an easy frame of reference. And now that I think about it, the hospital looks a lot like the last hospital I was in, which is probably why it was the freshest image in my mind. So I walked into this room, and there was my friend, the monk, lying on this hospital bed conventionalization. I sat down next to him and was silent for a minute. I guess I was waiting to see if he had anything to say. But he was just silent, and I wasn't sure whether he was aware that I was there. So I, softly greeted him, extended my mind slowly, and just wanted to let him know that I was here. And I asked him how he was doing, but he was very silent. He seemed to have what soldiers in the Vietnam War called the 1,000-yard stare. It's what happens to soldiers who are in combat for so long that they're just numb. They can't think. They can't feel emotions. It's just that they've gone through so much trauma that all they can do is just blankly stare out at the horizon with this world-weary gaze. And that's what I was getting from him. Eventually, after I slowly reached out again, he acknowledged, and for a minute he couldn't place me. But then he said, "Rick?" I said, "Yes, it's me." And he said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm fine. How are you?" At first he was a little confused, and I could sense that he was fighting through a number of emotions. He'd felt irritable, a little agitated. He felt anxious. He felt like he was inside a cocoon all by himself. And he was trying to stay focused on having this conversation with me. And he was having a hard time answering me. So I said, you must have been through a lot. He said, yes. And then after a while, he said, I was told that you were the one who came to save me. I said, yes, I was. And then he struck out at me, and I wasn't expecting it. And he said, why did you take so long? I wasn't expecting that type of an attack. So I was at a loss for words. But I came back and I said, I'm sorry, but you were trapped on this magnetar and I couldn't approach. I had to project 10,000 years into the future just to be able to get you, to bring you to a place where you could be healed. And he thought about that. He thought about it for a while. And then he just kind of nodded his head. And then I asked him, what was it like? And he looked at me and he gave me a picture of what it was like. Imagine for an eternity having your mind scattered over an infinite to you amount of space. He sensed, he had an awareness of the lapse of time. He knew from time to time who he was, but then he'd forget who he was. He suffered. He suffered in a way that word doesn't cover it. Imagine being lost and blind in a room for so long that you forget your own name. You forget everything that you'd ever learned. And eventually you forget that you exist. All you can feel is pain, loss, but you can't put your finger on the source of that pain or loss. And then imagine dwelling in that state for eons. That's what he went through. And my description is wholly inadequate to what he showed me, but it's the best that I could do. And it was just awful. It was awful. I obviously told him I was very sorry. I couldn't do anything more quickly. He just numbly accepted my apology. I didn't get any other emotions from him. After a little while, he came to again and just said, how could I have been so stupid? And I said, I don't understand. And that's when he told me that both he and the Virgin had been trapped by the Master on their mission. And that the Virgin must have gone over to the Master at some point, because it looked like they were going to be able to escape. And the Virgin said he knew the way out. So the monk followed him, only to end up trapped on that hellish magnetar. And I told him he wasn't stupid. He was just trusting what he thought was a friend and an ally, and that he was betrayed. He wasn't stupid. Anyone can be betrayed. He said he accepted that, but I think he still blames himself for everything that he went through. At that, I was kind of tapped on the shoulder by one of the healers, and they said that it was time that I should leave him be for now. But as I was leaving, the worst part happened. And he just beamed at me and he thanked me for visiting him, but he told me not to come back. So I left. After that visit, I struggled with quite a lot of emotions. I think I went through the entire gamut of emotions when an idea came to me. And I imagine some of you will question my course of action, but I have no regrets. I sent a message to the Virgin, and I told him that I wanted to talk. And I gave him the coordinates for our talk. And I gave him my word that I would do nothing to harm him. And he knows me well enough that I keep my word. So I think he believed that I had changed my mind. So when he appeared above that planet, Oceania, along with me, he looked very proud and very full of himself and said, "So, have you come around to the Master's way of thinking? He is the best being to lead us into this new utopia, this new vision for the conscious peoples of the universe." And I told him that no, I had not come around to his way of thinking. So then he got a little indignant, a little angry, and said, "Then why have you asked for this meeting? Why are you wasting my time?" I said, "Well, I thought you might be interested in the monk. You remember the monk, don't you? He was our comrade who you end up tricking onto the magnetar." Well, with that, I got a flash of anger from the Virgin. And he said it was his own fault. He had the same chance that I did to come to his senses and join the winning side. And he was stubborn and refused to listen to reason. So I had to do what I had to do. And the Master said the best thing would be to trap him on that magnetar and keep him out of the way. I said that I'd visited him and that he was in a very, very serious state. And I wondered if he had any regrets at all, knowing that, I beamed to him just how much damage had been done to our former comrade, the monk, and that if he had any regrets as to what had happened. And he said, "No, I don't. It was his own fault, and if he'd listened to reason, he'd be on the winning side right now." So I said, "Okay, that's just what I wanted to know." And then I sort of glanced down at the planet and glanced back at the Virgin. And that kind of got him interested for a second in the planet itself. And he said, "Why are we meeting here?" I said, "No particular reason. It's just a planet that I've discovered and explored a little bit." And then he kind of tuned in to the planet and he said, "What is the attraction to this place? I feel it. I feel there's something here that's attracting. Um, what kind of power have you discovered?" I said, "I haven't discovered any kind of power here." "Well, then why are you here? Why are you spending time here? What are you hiding? Is it something that you're going to use to support your old corrupt council?" I said, "Not at all." I said, "There's nothing here that I want to use." And then he looked at me and said, "Why is your mind closed? You're lying to me, aren't you? You're protecting something here on this planet, something that would probably be of use to our side. I'm going to explore it and you can't stop me." I said, "I don't advise that." With that, he was definitely convinced that he was going to explore this planet. And so he told me, "You're going to lose, and I'm going to discover the secret of this place, and I'm going to use it just to destroy your side once and for all." I said nothing. He dove into the atmosphere of this planet, just radiating all kinds of emotions, victory with some vanity, a tinge of anger. And I sensed what happened next. He sought out the same intelligences that I had sought out and was very much in the very same situation that I had been in not that long ago, except he did not keep his vibratory level high. He found himself consumed by the anger and the violence of Oceania. I stayed there for a little bit, at least long enough to know that he has now gotten sucked into that planet's reincarnation cycle. I left the planet not feeling good or vindicated, but feeling that perhaps some basic justice had been done, but at the same time a little sad that yet another comrade or ex-comrade of mine had fallen victim to this particular war. If you found that video interesting in any way, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to hit that bell, you'll get notified Wednesday 2 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., when one video becomes published, and of course Saturday at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S., when the Saturday morning video gets published. Please leave me your questions, comments, and your thoughts. I know I have mixed feelings about this whole process. My primary feeling right now is just really a sense of loss. At any rate, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.